So last fall there was an essay competition, and the prompt was to write on the religious and political implications of an ethical issue that you have personal experience with. So I thought that would be a good opportunity for me to start writing something, and in my typical fashion I didn't actually get it in by the deadline, but I continued writing it for cathartic reasons, and so this is what I have. I recently attended an All Souls Requiem Eucharist at a nearby Anglican church. A requiem is a service that is held to commemorate those who have died. The congregation gathers together to grieve for those who have perished in the community. The service began with a solemn hymn, and as the ministers processed in, the hymn ended with a classic Kyrie eleison, saying, "Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy." This cry for mercy is perhaps all too familiar for me. Not to say that I need any more mercy from the divine than any other person, but when I was younger, I very much thought I did. Having grown up in the Christian tradition and having consumed the dogma as if it were a ready-made microwave dinner, I took for granted the answers given to me. The world I lived in was a pristine black and white, in which answers were easily labeled as right and wrong, and knowing the will of God was just a prayer away. I begged that I be granted mercy from hell, and I understood mercy to come in the form of being straight. I had a vision for my life when I grew older, the classic vision. You know it well. The wife, the 2.5 kids, the dog. I assumed that if that was what God wanted for me, if that was the life I was supposed to lead, that God would make me capable of it. When I was younger, I never envisioned my life going any other way, of being gay. I didn't think it was possible. God would make me attracted to women. But as the old adage goes, hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. And I grew very, very sick. I wasn't looking for God to come down in a pillar of fire. I would have been content with a still small voice, but nothing. After years of prayer and a failed exorcism later, disillusionment finally set in. I have finally been coming to terms with the fact that my experiences do not seem to align with the set of doctrinal beliefs that I was raised in. I cannot explain the pain that this coming to terms entails, the loss that I have to grieve over. And Nicholas Wolterstorff, in his book Lament of a Son, reflects on his own mourning after a tragic accident took his son's life. "I lament all that might have been and now never will be," he says. Mourning, as Wolterstorff envisions it, is not grief for the past, but grief for a lost future. And with every fiber of my being, I mourned for the future I would not live. This passage struck me particularly, as I can only imagine my parents are currently going through a similar process. As I have had to let go of a future I had always imagined for myself, my parents have also had to let go of a future they imagined for me, their child. The son they thought they had no longer exists. He never really did. My parents have reassured me of their love for me, and I do not doubt it, but they have also reiterated their spiritual fears. My father, a pastor, admitted that if he were counseling someone in a similar position as mine, he would advocate celibacy, though making that request of his son is far more difficult. And it's this difficulty, and the understanding of this difficulty, that seems to be an example of mourning. There is no question that my father still believes strongly in traditional Christian doctrine regarding homosexuality. He has even appealed to me saying, "I don't want to spend eternity without you." But the difference is, I'm not someone he is counseling. I am his son, whom he loves, with whom, aside from my homosexuality, he is well pleased. The fact that I am his son changes the situation. Rather than being able to offer advice or counsel, he has only his vulnerability, his fears to offer. Homosexuality is no longer a question of doctrine. It is a question of his son, a question now fully involved in his own story. My parents' grief is very much a result of the tension between their love and their faith, and now they are torn in a similar fashion as I. My father hasn't said it, but I know he blames himself, as though there must have been something he could have done, should have done, to prevent me from being gay. The Christianity I was brought up in typically explains alternative sexual orientations as a result of an act of will or self-deception. And if that were the case, my parents might bear some blame for my attractions. This, too, is a part of their mourning. As I am not who they thought I was, neither are they who they thought they were. They did not know they were the parents of a gay son, a son who felt alienated by the same Christianity they found so comforting. And who are they now? What must they do now that their identity as parents has radically shifted? How do they relate to a God who gave them a gay son? Furthermore, how will they continue to see me? Will they forever understand me, their son, as suffering from a delusion? For the rest of my life, will they see me as lost, as perverse? I cannot answer it for them any more than I can answer my own questions. And for that, too, I grieve. But even gay rights activists can paint the issue of homosexuality in starkly black and white. But attempts to educate the religious still do not address the very real pain they can endure. They do not address the very real loss that occurs. To disallow anyone's mourning is to disallow the transformative powers of mourning in general. If my parents have no right to grieve over a lost son, then neither do I have a right to grieve over what I thought should have been, over a lost faith as I knew it. Alluding to the biblical story of Job, Wolterstorff addresses those who have come to speak to him at his mourning bench. Please, don't say it's not really so bad, because it is. If you think your task as comforter is to tell me that really, all things considered, it's not so bad, you do not sit with me in my grief, but place yourself off in the distance away from me. Over there you are of no help. What I need to hear from you is that you recognize how painful it is. I need to hear from you that you are with me in my desperation. To comfort me, you have to come close. Come sit beside me on my mourning bench. My parents are not wrong in their grief. Grief is never wrong. It may, in fact, be the only hope of reconciliation, for no one can mourn pridefully. The fact that they grieve, that I grieve, means we no longer believe in something that doesn't exist. Our idols have been smashed, and we are left where any honest religious person seems always to be left, looking for the face of an elusive God. The question, though, the question that remains is, where do we go from here? I can no longer mourn for what is lost, for I still have my whole life ahead of me, even if it's not the life I had anticipated. By necessity, I've had to come to some sort of acceptance of the life I have available. But what about my parents? When will their mourning end? And while they grieve, what words of consolation can I offer them? I'm here, I can say. I love you, I can remind them. But I'm conflicted. I can try to be a comforter, but how can I comfort when I'm also the very cause of their pain? It seems sometimes that I could assuage their pain by choosing to be alone myself. But can one pain heal another? By choosing not to be alone, am I intentionally causing them pain? We find ourselves in a strange situation where each feels responsible for the other, in a way none of us know how to fix. We find ourselves in the very place the disciples found themselves at the death of their Savior, mourning for the loss of what they understood to be the answer, awaiting a God who has intervened in the past, wondering if he'll intervene in the future. In this moment, there is uncertainty, and with that uncertainty, fear. But there is no guarantee of a solution. But we wait. Humbly and vulnerably, we wait. And if I were ever to write my own requiem, my own liturgy of mourning, I would probably end it by borrowing lines from Sufjan Stevens when he says, "All the glory that the Lord has made, and the complications when I see his face."